Welcome back. This is the second video of 3, where we are exploring how do you effectively brand yourself throughout your job search process, all the way from building a branding statement to utilizing it on your resume and your networking and interviewing processes as well. My name again is Porras, and I am looking forward to spending this time with you. On the first video, we discussed how having the right wording is going to be instrumental in your success through this process, specifically because your resume will be screened by an applicant tracking system looking for words, but also because you want to have the same terminology as your target audience when you are describing what is your value proposition, what can you do for them. On this video, we're going to explore how do we use the research from your homework. And that means the keywords that you found to be consistent across several job descriptions on the responsibility section and the qualification section. How do you utilize them to create a compelling branding statement that describes who you are and your value? First, how do we craft a branding statement utilizing the keywords from your job posting search? What we're trying to do is create an eloquent way of describing who you are, rather than just throw a bunch of keywords together. We are also going to understand how to use this branding statement in different scenarios. And we're going to adapt the branding statement onto a summary statement for the resume. So both your branding statement and your summary statement will be consistent throughout your job search, minimizing the need for you to reinvent yourself and having to re-explain or remember which version of yourself you introduced to different people. Some of the key topics that we're going to discuss. What is your brand? And for that matter, what is your reputation of your brand? What is your profession? Within that profession, what areas of expertise would you want to focus on? What are some of the skills and competencies that you can bring onto a company to perform a job well done? And some of the adjectives that you use to describe yourself. All of these are what you would find on keywords. We're going to talk about your brand, and for that matter, what is your reputation? When people think about you, what comes to mind? We'll also talk about your profession, areas of expertise, the skills and competencies that you bring to a company, and adjectives or personal characteristics that you can use to describe your work style. All of these should come from the keyword research that you performed. So we want to ask ourselves, what is in a brand? What is branding? When you look at the brands on your screen, you have 4 companies that are really well known. Each one of you will have a different idea of what this brand represents. But the products that they present, what they do, is known to everybody. Now, whether you like that or not, whether you need it or not, is not the point. The point is, when you see the brands, you know what they stand for. You know what they do. Some of these brands, as you can see, have their names on them. There are some brands where you don't even need a name. So the name doesn't create the brand, it's the brand itself. What you're trying to present is an image. If I change the wording on each one of these 4 brands that we saw at the beginning to something different, and you look at that image, you will still recall the brand itself. You're not going to focus on the wording. You may realize that the wording is wrong, but you're going to associate this with the original product, not the changed wording. And this is what we want to do for you. We want to create a branding statement that defines who you are and what you do, without going into all the specifics of what your specific products are, or the specific features are. We want to create an overall brand that is easily understood. But first we need to define, what does a good brand look like? What are the attributes of a good brand? So number 1, it is easily recognizable. The second one, it provides a consistent message across multiple channels. It doesn't matter whether I'm looking at your resume, or you and I have a conversation about what you want to do in a casual setting or doing an interview. The content of your brand should be the same, and it should be consistent. The way you say it may be different, but it should be consistent. And that leads me to point number 3. It utilizes a language that the audience understands. And this is the reason why we're going to use that research you did from video 1. It also builds credibility and trust. And this last word, trust, is the reason why somebody would give you the opportunity to find employment. They need to trust that you can do the job that they have open. They need to trust that you're going to perform the functions of that job to the standards that the organization wants. A brand also shows your passion and your focus. And it paints a picture of who you are as a professional. Overall, covering 3 main areas: the type of job that you can do, the type of organization in which you would be a good fit, and the type of team members that would work well with you. Those 3 items should be included in your brand in broad terms, but they need to be included. For the format of today's session, we're going to focus on frequently asked questions. Your branding statement will answer the question, tell me about yourself. And you are going to get this question asked several different times throughout your job search. Almost everybody you talk to will say a variation of, tell me about yourself. So what do you do? What type of job you're looking for, etc. Tell me about yourself is key, and that's where the branding comes in. Another question is, what do you want to do next? Or how can I support you? Because very often, people will be looking for a job that not necessarily imitates the previous one, maybe a variation of it. You may be tired of an industry, of a type of role, of an area of expertise that you have, etc. And lastly, why are you in the job market? Those 4 questions are going to be the focus of the rest of our session today. So let's talk about the first one. Tell me about yourself. When you're crafting your statement, please understand that you are an expert in what you do. You are an expert in yourself, in your brand, but your audience is not. And you may very well be talking to people who don't know about your job. They may understand a little bit of it. They may not understand the details. So the first thing you want to do is you want to create a statement that goes in order. You talk about specifics at the end once you know the broad parts of the statements are understood. Because you have used your keyword research to identify what your target market uses to describe what you do, you want to utilize your keyword research to connect with that target audience. You want to use short sentences, not very long sentences. The way that the human brain works, it can retain between 5 to 7 ideas at a specific point in time. When you start using sentences that sound like a supermarket list or a shopping list, I should say, people will hear what you say, but they won't be able to retain it. So no more than 5 key ideas per sentence. Your branding statement overall should not take longer than 45 seconds to say out loud. And I'll get back to this in just a second. Lastly, you want to record yourself saying this statement, listening to the recording, so that you can give yourself feedback and make corrections as appropriate. Please understand that nobody speaks the way they write. So when you put together your statement is going to sound very technical, and we'll see some examples coming up. So you want to internalize the content of the statement and then deliver it in the tone of the conversation you're having. Now let's get back to the statement should take between 20 to 45 seconds to say out loud. For several years, ever since I started doing this job, and I started 18 years ago, coaches like me have been recommending individuals in transition to have a 30-second statement, a 45-second statement, a minute-and-a-half statement describing who they are, what they do, etc. We have to be careful with this because you're going to use this statement in different contexts. If you're casually networking with somebody that you just met, you're not discussing a specific job, and the purpose is just to get to know one another on the surface, and you take a minute and a half to address the question, so what do you do? You're going to turn off your audience, and you're not going to have a very successful conversation. So anyway, as we go through this, we'll address which parts of your statement should always be included and what should you leave for a follow-up conversation or maybe later down the conversation. This is a sample statement. And I've highlighted this in different colors to show you what short sentences mean. Remember, we're talking about having no more than 5 key ideas per sentence. So I am an accounting professional with extensive experience in the oil and gas industry. Short, simple, and sweet. Now I know you're in accounting and you are in the oil and gas industry. Great. What else? Within accounting, there's a lot of things that you could do. My expertise encompasses accounts payable, accounts receivable, reconciliations, and general ledger. 4 areas of accounting. Excellent. If I'm looking for somebody to do cost accounting or something different than that, then I know that's not the person I'm looking for, which should be good for you because they may not be the job that you want. So when we talk about those first 2 sentences, accounting professional with expertise in accounts payable, receivable, reconciliations, and general ledger, you have to be sure that your areas of expertise are broad enough to cover all the type of jobs that you would like to do, but not so broad that now nobody knows exactly what you want to do. It takes a little bit of work, and that's one of the reasons why working with a career coach is a good idea. Let's keep going down this. I take the initiative to audit, identify, and resolve accounting issues in a proactive manner that minimizes month-end close delays. You're showing how you operate, what you do, what sets you apart, and at the end of that sentence, your value proposition, minimizing month-end close delays. I work in a collaborative manner that fosters teamwork across all areas of the organization. Great. Now, all of this sound like HR fluff. And you're right, it is HR fluff. Because all of this is built with the common wording that you will find on a job description. At the end of this statement are your key competencies. My key competencies include vendor relations, team leadership, issue resolution, collections, data entry, invoicing, invoice review, electronic transfers, and check runs. When you get to this level of detail, it has to be a conversation where a decision maker is involved. Somebody who wants to see you performing on a specific job is involved. For a casual conversation, this information, it's just way too much. Now, let's take a look at how to put one of these statements together. First, when you have a lot of keywords, and I expect everybody to have a lot of keywords if you have looked at a few job descriptions, it's very easy for you to start putting all those job descriptions together in a manner that kind of makes sense and sounds good. The problem with something like this is that we have a lot of different ideas on the same branding statement. So let's break them down. You have your profession, your areas of expertise, skills that you're trying to show, characteristics of who you are as an individual, the competencies that you can perform, the parts of the job that you can perform, and your value proposition. Now, if you notice on this graphic, there's colors all over the place in this statement. So we have sentences that combine 2, 3, 4 different of these areas into the same sentence. That is just way too much information. So what we need to do is put the right content in the right sentence. By no means do you need to follow this exact example, but this is how I would reword the same statement. If you notice, now, aside from the value proposition, which is what you see in orange, everything else is together within its own sentence. So we have your profession with a value proposition, your areas of expertise, your characteristics with a value proposition, your skills with a value proposition, and at the end, your competencies. It's a much more organized way of describing what you are, who you are, how do you work. So my suggestion is keep things together in the same category rather than creating categories with combinations. That it makes it messy. Now, earlier I said you're going to have to deliver this to different audiences and different settings. So you may be talking to somebody who's a potential boss or hiring manager. Now, if this is in the context of an interview, more than likely, the information on your branding statement, which is almost the same as the information you're going to have on your summary statement to be consistent, they have already seen on your resume. So when they say, tell me about yourself, they're not really asking you to regurgitate that branding statement. They already saw it on your resume. What they're really asking is, tell me how that statement adapts to the potential job that we're discussing here. Now, what if there's no potential job? What if you're just discussing the possibility of a job in the future? You're just networking with this hiring manager. Well, you can't customize that branding statement to a job anymore. So you have to speak in more general terms, giving enough details for a hiring manager to go, yeah, I mean, this person really knows what they're doing and what they want to do. You may be talking to somebody in human resources during an interview. Well, human resources is a very key area of the organization, but I have never met a human resources professional who understands in depth every position in the company. So when you go to the level of detail that you would share within your peers and with your boss, oftentimes, and I'm not saying every time, but oftentimes, human resources professionals like myself, we get lost. I hear what you're saying, but I really can't tell if that makes you a fit for the job. I would like to hear more about your style of operations. How do you work? Do you fit the corporate culture? That type of thing. Now, I do want to know that you are the right type of person for the job. But if I have 3 candidates with very similar competencies, as a human resources person, it's going to be hard for me to understand who is the best candidate because I'm not the hiring manager for that job. Same thing if you're talking to a human resources person in an informal conversation, you're just networking. When you start talking about how great you are at doing all the specifics of the job, in human resources, we don't have that job opening. This is just a networking conversation, just to explore what may be coming down the pipeline in the future. There's no way I'm going to remember all the details. So the first couple of lines of your resume, of your branding statement, should be appropriate. I am an accounting professional with expertise in accounts payable, receivable, etc. And then you go on with a conversation rather than a monologue. If you're talking to the potential peer in that company, again, could be an interview, could be a networking conversation, 2 completely different conversations. If you're talking to somebody who is an industry contact, somebody who knows a lot of people in different companies, but doesn't do the type of job that you do, why would you go to all the level of details of how great you are, the specifics of the job? They won't care. More than likely, they'll be concerned with, how can I help you? Is there any connection that I can make for you? And if you're talking to a personal contact, more often than not, they already know what you do. You don't need to go through your whole spiel. For example, if I'm having a conversation with my brother, who knows me really well, and I start by saying, I am a human resources professional with over 20 years of experience in diverse industries. My expertise includes training, coaching, leadership development. He's not going to let me finish, and he's not going to pay attention to what I'm saying. He already knows. So always customize your branding statement to the conversation you're having. In other words, ask yourself, what am I supposed to do in this particular meeting? And that leads me to the next couple of questions that are frequently asked. What do you want to do next, and how can I support you? Most people, when you are networking, really want to help you out. Most of them want to see a solution come out of that conversation. But very few of them are going to be able to help you out if you can't explain how you need help or how you want to be helped. So for every single conversation you have to ask yourself, what am I trying to get out of this conversation? You have to adjust your message. Number 1, stay focused on the desired result. Yes, the ultimate result is to get a job. Of course, that's the main point of what we're doing here. However, each conversation you have will not result in a job interview. Each conversation you have is not going to result in an offer. Conversations you have may lead you to discover new contacts that you didn't have before. Conversations you have may lead you to strengthen your position if a potential opening should occur. So ask yourself in the beginning of each conversation, out of this particular conversation, what value should I seek? What do I need to find? And focus on that desired result. What is the purpose of the conversation? How much do I need to say? And I highlight the word need because very often when you create your branding statement, you practice it so much that you can say it memorized. You have a tendency to do so. Again, there's a lot of different types of meetings that you will have, and very rarely you are going to have to say the whole statement exactly as you wrote it. So how much do I need to say for them to understand what I'm trying to do? Do they want to hear about me for 30 seconds? And if that's the case, do they want to hear about you for 30 seconds straight? The answer to that question very rarely is yes. So the idea for the branding statement is for you to have content to deliver throughout your conversation, not for you to deliver it as a monologue again. Another thing that happens very often when people are in job search, they create this statement and they pour hours on this statement, is that the statement now makes perfect sense to them. Well, that's because you've spent hours creating the statement. Sometimes you're delivering the statement, even if you deliver it exactly like you planned, your audience may not get it. So check for understanding. A lot of people are going to be uncomfortable saying, what do you mean by leadership development? What do you mean by this, that, or the other? Or I've heard about project management, but it sounds very simple. Tell me more about it. Very few people will say that. Most of them will prefer to not feel embarrassed by asking you, and they'll pretend they understood. So check for understanding if appropriate. And whenever you see that they didn't fully understood what you said, clarify it. It's okay to do so. Now listen with your eyes and ears. Very often I see people who don't understand what I'm saying by looking at them, rather than by them telling me. So you have to be a great listener in order for you to deliver a good statement. Now the last question that we're going to address today is probably the hardest question you're going to have to answer when you are in job search. Why are you in job search? What happened at your previous job? Why are you looking for a job? This question is very hard to answer because very often it involves how you feel about being on the job search process, and very few people feel happy about it. So we're going to break this down in two parts. The first part, we want to explain why are we in the job market in very simple terms. And the second one, we want to focus forward as to what we want to do next. So why are you in the job market? Be as factual as possible. You don't want to show any negativity towards your former company, boss, peers, HR, or anybody at that company. Any negativity that you have towards that, you have to deal with before you go out and start looking for a job. That will help you in point number two. Avoid being defensive. Avoid blaming something else. Avoid blaming the COVID-19 pandemic. Avoid blaming the downturn in the oil market. Avoid the blame game and be factual. Being factual will show other people that you understand this is a business decision or a business situation, because believe it or not, you are in business for yourself. So it is a business situation and you're ready to move forward, which leads me to point number three. Focus on the future. Focus on what the opportunity is. Only when this is appropriate. And this is key because oftentimes we get a phone call out of the blue. Maybe we had experienced rejection from a couple of networking opportunities, maybe an interview that didn't go our way. And somebody says, why are you in the job market? And we utilize that time to complain about how hard the job market is, how horrible it is. And if we don't feel like this situation is a good opportunity for you to move on, it's going to be very hard for you to deliver it in a eloquent manner. So let's take a look at some samples. If you were part of a layoff, a reduction in force, you can say something like this. Now, keep in mind, again, nobody talks on a conversation the way we write. Recent reorganization of XYZ company resulted in a number of positions being eliminated. My position was one of those impacted. or restructure. With the new management coming into our department, came some changes in how the operations would be covered. As a result, my position was eliminated. Maybe you're trying to change careers. After 10 years working in retail sales, I decided that it was time for a change that would allow me to be more predictable, to have a more predictable schedule. While the work at DEF company was rewarding, and then we go to focus on the future statement. This change has allowed me the opportunity to focus on my passion for identifying and developing business through whatever it is that you want to do next. So a couple of things here, and I'm going to repeat myself when I say this. The first part should always be delivered and should be factual and short. 3 things that you need to include. What happened? Layoff, restructuring, career change, whatever the case may be. Second, if more people than you were affected, you can say how many people were affected. Hundreds of positions were eliminated, or thousands of positions, or a number of positions were eliminated. What you're saying is the position was eliminated, not that you were eliminated. Be careful with saying, they laid me off. Because more often than not, the company eliminated a job, not a person. So my position was one of those impacted. My position was eliminated. Now, if you feel like this is an opportunity and you really believe that last statement, then you go with it. If you don't, then just explain what happened, short, sweet, to the point. Again, 3 things. Restructuring, layoff, whatever the case may be, how many people were affected, showing that it was a lot more than yours, and the recognition that your position was one of those that was eliminated. Or if your position was the only one, that your position was eliminated, not you. Now with that, the same statement we had above for that sales professional, when we were talking about the different colors and keeping things in the same categories, etc., it's shown here. As you can see, a very minor tweak. We removed every part of the statement that started with the word I, or my, or anything that showed that you are speaking through this resume. On the flip side, the resume should be talking about you. The resume is presenting you, so you don't use first person, and for that matter, you don't use third person either. It's impersonal. Strategic sales professional with a proven track record of success, etc., etc., etc. Now, I hope that this video has been effective in showing you how to put together a branding statement and how to modify it or utilize it for different scenarios. On video number 3, we are going to talk about how do we finalize your resume with the professional experience. How do we show your value proposition throughout that whole resume? And more important, how do you support everything you said on that summary statement with specific actions that you've taken and results? Before we finish today, I would like to give you your assignment before we meet again. The assignment is to develop your branding statement. Number 1, identify what your profession is. Your profession should be the type of work that you want to do that is broad enough to encompass all the type of jobs that you would like to do. So the type of work that you want to do rather than the specific jobs you want to do. Within that scope of work, select the 3 to 4 areas of expertise that fit under the umbrella of your profession that you would like to focus on. And with those 2, it'll be easy for you to write your first 2 sentences. Then, organize the remaining keywords, like we showed you in the video: skills, characteristics, and competencies. And with that, finalize your branding statement. I really appreciate your time. Thank you for staying with the videos. I look forward to seeing you for video number 3.